us talk, a whole range of different things, and anything from the way in which they were exit counseled out or deprogrammed out, people who had walked out, who felt like second-class citizens in the midst of the conference compared with other people, feelings of anger, of fear, of gratefulness, of all kinds of different things. And I really, aside from kind of pinpointing the theme of issues about coming out, it's kind of wide open to all of us. Because of the size of the group, I'd like to ask people use a microphone. There are two of them in the inner circle. One's there with John, and one's here with me. You may, when you talk, you may feel like saying your name, what group you were in. You may not. It's up to you. Because we have so many people and we have about 40 minutes, time is short, so I would ask you to be considerate and not talk for a long time about what you want to say to the General Convention. This is being videotaped, and other people who were not able to come to the convention will be able to see this and listen to this, ex-members as well as CAN affiliate members. And so hopefully it will create a lot of knowledge, of insight, and stimulus for discussion later. With that in mind, I would just also like to thank the former members who shared on the panel yesterday. It was personally very moving for me, and I know that it was moving for the General Convention as well. Who would like to make an opening statement, or would anyone like to make an opening statement about being here, or what they learned, or what they think, or what they'd like to see, or what they aren't seeing? Great, thank you.
The concern I have is basically there are a number of people now, as ex-members, a lot of us, that are from an area that is very controversial about whether it's cultic or not, and it's the New Age movement. My own personal experiences from being a devoted New Ager, and I like the way Carol put it. What did you say, Carol? You got
workshop junkies?
Yeah, workshop junkies. You know, and this is a whole new thing that's going on, and a lot of us have had experiences that that some people would blow their minds if they one person had told me that they thought that maybe Circle of Power was, a hard film for a lot of people to watch because they didn't think it was true or valid. I watched Circle of Power during my exit counseling, and I sat there and go, my goodness, they made a film about my life. It was very close to some of my experiences, very much so. And I know there's other people in here, and since that's a newer thing than the Hare Krishnas and the Moonies, I want to get everybody else's feeling about it. It's one that's harder to talk about, too. There's a lot of powerful people involved in this area. It's very socially acceptable.
What was it like for you coming out of the New Age group?
Yeah, well, a lot of it had to do with, because I was in what's classified as a therapy type cult, and I noticed even after Dallas, one of the things that I can't sit in front of therapists and listen to their language and listen to them talk and go on. And when it first came out, I would even go into flashback reactions. I call them flashback because it was like an LSD trip hitting you again. You start to hallucinate, you start to do all of those things. I've now gotten to the point where I can handle listening to them without going through that reaction. But in some ways, I think I know more about therapy. In fact, Margaret Singer, we had a discussion on the phone once. She said, sometimes I feel like I need to learn more things from the ex-members. People look at me as the expert if I wasn't there. And people who have been in therapy, and there's a lot of us that I think people need to learn some more about these, and there needs to be a lot more research.
I didn't come out of a therapy group. I came out of a fundamentalist group, but I've experienced the exact same things. I'll hear buzzwords, and this is 5 years later, And I still have panic attacks. I went to a full-blown Catholic Mass last weekend and couldn't handle it. My fiance corrected me about something I'd done wrong he didn't approve of, and instantly I burst into sobs like I did when I used to be in a cult. This is 5 years later. I didn't get exit counseling or deprogramming. I was a walk-away, and I walked into the Navy, and there I've been floating for 5 years since. And just realized that this last weekend they sent me through a mini boot camp with Marine DIs, and it was the cult all over again. So the Navy, which used to be my rock, became the cult again. So I'm in the process of being discharged. Last year I was Sailor of the Year. I was to push myself incredibly hard to make rank in the Navy. Sailor of the Year, awarded an officer's program, and now I'm being discharged a couple months later for unsuitability and emotional instability. The group I was with was Jim Roberts, the same group that Jim Barrell was in.
My name is Joe Szimhart, and I was what I describe myself as an eclectic theosophist during the late 70s, and I delved into the groups which channel information from superior beings, similar to the group Rampa today. The groups I was involved with mainly were the Agni Yoga Society in New York City, the teachings of Madame Blavatsky, the teachings of Alice A. Bailey, the I Am movement, the Rosicrucian movement, and the most damaging group that I had involvement with was the Church Universal and Triumphant under Elizabeth Clare Prophet. I learned to chant and decree in rapid sort of manner. The Hindus call it Japa Yoga or Japa Yoga, and it's a mind-altering practice. It puts you in a hypnotic sort of trance, and that's sort of the drug of that particular cult. I was a walk-away or a walkout, as they say, and it took me a period of perhaps 2 to 2.5 years to sort out the information. A lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of praying, a lot of anger, and if I was to estimate in value, in money value, what that cost me, it was far more than the deprogramming would have. It took a lot of energy. As a result, I've learned a lot, but still, it's quite a price to pay.
I'm just curious, how many ex-members are walkaways? Very interesting. Maybe because there's so many of you that here, I didn't say me too because I was deprogrammed, but maybe you can offer some thoughts about how you came to be able to walk away. Would anyone else like to talk?
My name is Carol.
Switch it.
My name is Carol, and I was involved in Eston, the Hunger Project, for about 5 years. And it was a process of sorting out information for us because we had a daughter in Hare Krishna, and all the time that we were involved in Eston, the Hunger Project, we were also lecturing on cults and getting some people out. And we finally got to the point where we became leaders in the Hunger Project, and were trained in using some of the very techniques that we were talking about in our cult lectures, and it felt good, it felt powerful, and it was slightly, more than slightly addictive. And at that point, and at the point of a religious conversion experience for myself, we realized what we were caught up in and walked out. The first couple times that we had contact with CAN, first, because we were walkouts, we were kind of mistrusted. And I say that gently. We got the feeling that we were very much mistrusted. But there were other people at the same time who were very, very supportive of us. So it wasn't all mistrust. There were people that, as I look around here today, that people that really embraced us and that were very helpful, especially in Chattanooga when I had a very strong reaction to the speaker. And the support and the real understanding of the parents in CAN was very healing for us. At the same time, I have to say that, and I'm very uncomfortable saying this, that there are times when there are speakers that speak in a positive manner about trans states and about what we have come to call magical thinking. That it's very difficult in hearing that, especially when I'm putting myself in people's place who have just come out of the cult and have dealt with this deprogramming as something that was used to manipulate them, to get them reinforced in the cult mind state. And it's very, very difficult to hear this. And I know that I react to it still, not to the same degree that I reacted in Chattanooga, but it is very painful. And, I just ask for some sensitivity on the part of CAN to that as well. And I really, I guess that's what I want to say.
Who else would like to?
I was involved in TAM, so well, no. I was a walk away, but I didn't know I was a walk away. I didn't know I was in a cult. I decided that the things that were going on within that movement was contrary or contradictory to what little value I had left. I have to say, I began to notice things when I was in India on a course. And I think I was near death because of I would say the abuse of the course and the conditions there. And as I was lying in a bed without any medical help and all, and delirious, et cetera, for some reason I started to think for myself, because when I asked medical attention, somebody came and read the Vedas to me, and I started thinking to myself, man, I'm going out of this country in a pine box. And I didn't like that. So I guess what you do is you start surviving. Your instincts come back for some reason when you think the gig is up. I came back from that course very, very angry. And consequently, I had a cult marriage. That's not uncommon with the TM movement, by the way. I was married to an initiator. That's encouraged, obviously, to keep each other under control. I dissolved that situation, and for 4 years I wandered. I really didn't understand what was wrong with me, but I was programmed to behave in society as a very normal, very lively, balanced human being. I was representative of that movement, and how dare I ever show any other kind of, illusion to the crowds. I want everybody to join the group, right? Well, over the period of time, like I say, you just learn how to function this way. You just learn how to behave this way, but you don't have any idea what's going on inside of you. I was fortunate enough to end up here at a convention, and you all heard that story. I have to say that initially when I came, nobody really understood it. They knew, all I heard was this, yes, oh, you're in a cult. TM is a cult. They were suspicious of me. The first person I walked into when I came into the convention in Chattanooga said to me, what's your mantra? Believe it or not, I had never spoken my mantra out in all those years. I still had not gone through that process. I had not been deprogrammed. I didn't know what deprogramming was. I didn't know what cults were. I didn't know what brainwashing was. Well, boy, I thought, man, these people are nuts. What do you mean? What's my mantra? And I thought, I have to say now that I must tell you, I really appreciate. Now I understand. I really appreciate what CAN has done. I realize that we wouldn't be here if it weren't for their efforts. They can't possibly understand what was going on. But I want to let you know that as an ex-cult person and walk away without any information, how sensitive we are. We're very, very confused. We have no information. And it's just such a slow walk. Every year I come back, it's like the gong goes off. Ah, that's what they were talking about. I can't believe that. Oh, is that what was going on with me? And I appear to be perfect, getting along. But every day things pop up, and as things pop up, then we start putting it together as, the mechanics and the system that went down in our own personal groups. And that's what I was trying to tell you folks, that is starting to happen to some of us, and that's the information we're getting.
My name is Jim Williams, and I'm an ex-member of Scientology, and I'm buzzing again. A walk away, I guess I didn't really walk away from the church. I kind of crawled away after 13 years. And it was an extremely, I look at back now, it's kind of like, it was exciting in a way, but like it included, a 2.5-hour stay inside of a big trash dumpster, 2 bus rides and a taxi ride, which I didn't pay for, the taxi ride. And then it was an extremely long walk, almost 4 years, until I found the Cult Awareness Network. And I was sort of on the fringes of Scientology during that time, and I just wasn't sure of where to go, what to do, who to see, and it was really hard. I know of a lot of people who have come out of groups that have said the same thing, that they didn't even know this group ever existed. When I was in Scientology, I didn't know this group existed. I knew there were certain people that were, quote-unquote, out to get Scientology, but I didn't know that there was a group of people who really cared about people coming out of groups and were willing to help them. And since then, I've said, well, gee, I really need to help. I need to help people, other people who are coming out. I need to get an organization together where at least when people know they have a place to go to when they come out of a group, and people will help them. Basically all I want to say. I'm just passing. Anybody want that?
By the way, when one mic is on, the other one needs to be off, otherwise it gets feedback. That's what it's buzzing.
Hi, I was in Lifespring, and I was what I considered to be deprogrammed. And I guess coming out of, when we talk about it, the focus of this discussion is on coming out of a cult, there were a number of things that went on for me. I think the best advice I got right away was get home, go home, where there's such a solid base of security and support and love that transcended my time with the group, that I could kind of hit solid base again. And I guess the parents sitting out there need to know that that was just real key for me, that I found myself and I could take a harder look at what I went through. I think my experience with my parents was real good, and then right after I came out was a Chattanooga experience that was really discouraging for me, very difficult for me. And that's because, as Carol indicated, there were some in this group that were extremely supportive, and you just felt as if you were comforted and embraced and loved and supported, just like that parental experience I was talking about. And then there was another faction that was saying, well, you've been deceived. You haven't really been in a cult that isn't like the religious cults. And I guess that was very, very difficult to hear coming out at the very beginning. And I have since gotten a perspective and felt, more secure in my knowledge that that was in fact a cultic experience, that I know those people are wrong, and maybe that's controversial, but anyway. So I guess I just want to say thank you to the people who were supportive at that point. That was very, very helpful. I think another issue that maybe hasn't been discussed is when you come away from a cult, you have to find a balance in your life as far as getting involved with fighting the cult or exposing it. And kind of the other angle is getting a sense of yourself and what was it that made you get into that group, and what open questions are there that still need to be answered. And I think I'm struggling with a balance between that. I want to expose Lifespring. I want to keep other people from going through that experience, but I also don't want to go overboard in that regard, so that I'm not, so that I can reconnect with my own needs in a spiritual way, which I still haven't done. I still have so many questions, and I still have so many things that I want to talk to about with other people, and find people who believe as I do and who are searching as I do. And so all those things that got me to Lifespring are still there. And I guess I struggle with not going overboard and fighting the cults, but I know that's important too.
Thank you, that was great. I just wanted to say that one comment was that when, as you were saying, when former members come out, part of you wants to help others, but part of you needs to take care of yourself. And what I found particularly difficult in the first year that I was out was parents, out of their own need to help their own children who were involved with groups, guilt-tripping me and pressuring me to help them. And it took me, I think, 6.5, 7 years being out of the group before I could feel comfortable within myself to say, no, I just can't help, or I don't have the time, or I need to take a break, I need a vacation. And so that's one thing I just wanted to share. Somebody else.
I want to talk about public speaking for those of you who are new. There's something, I will. What I'm concerned about is what I found after I started doing public speaking. I recommend to those of you who are new and maybe want to talk about your groups, don't do it without some support. I went back to North Dakota and did it basically on my own. And if you're new out of a group, you need somebody that you can be with, because you run into people who are going through experiences, who ask you a lot of intimate personal things, and you need somebody nearby.
Yeah, I left the Hare Krishnas 4 years ago, and while it was difficult to leave, it was still a whole lot easier than being the Krishnas. Okay. The thing I wanted the most was to be accepted as being normal. Okay. And maybe that was, especially by my parents, you know, they'd get real worried every time we got into the city, or anytime I do anything. And they're still real worried about me. And maybe I was expecting a lot after, you know, being on this weird trip. Okay. You know, and I hear two different things going on. You know, I'm hearing here that we want people to be sensitive to our needs. Okay, you know, that is. We're sensitive to all these different buzzwords, but we also want to be accepted as being normal folks. You know, we're just working out some stuff.
I don't know.
Maybe I'm going to ask a question. I hope I can hear for myself. I was a walk away, in a sense, walked away from a group called GCI. I was one of the leaders in the group, and I guess the word that comes to my mind is that I had a vague sense of realization while I was in the group that something wasn't right. And I don't know if that rings any bells with you, but then I started to put labels on all that stuff, and then it was sort of an unfolding, a turning of pages. I found this little piece and that little piece. Like the first thing I realized is that they're doing some things that are wrong. And the second thing that just about blew my mind is that, you know, we felt we were so counterculture and everything. And I finally realized it was the denomination that was almost like realizing, you know, something horrible because we were so anti-everything. And then I began to realize that he was a false teacher. And it was just all this unfolding. I had enough information to walk away. I didn't realize it was a cult or cult-like till after I got out. So in a sense, you're physically out, you're intellectually out enough to know that it's wrong, but you're still putting pieces together afterwards. pieces sometimes that come together years after you've
How
been
long?
out. I was involved for 8 years, and I've been out for 8 years, and I'm still putting pieces together. Because I keep seeing different layers of the whole situation. I know that, we talk about how the family, my father was the first person to tell me that he was a false teacher. And that was just blew my mind. I thought, well, he's gone too far, but I'll tell you that sunk in.
At what point did he tell you that?
Well, when I started seeing problems with the group, I confronted the leadership.
After how many years?
Well, after being in for 8 years, I repeatedly confronted the leadership, and their counterattack was identical to the Chinese communist brainwashing techniques, except they didn't torture you physically, but there were the late night visits, and you were supposed to confess all these crimes against the people or whatever. You have sinned, but we can't tell you what it is, but you got to keep looking, and so you were just spacing out trying to figure out what was wrong. But I just want to say that all this that I heard from some people that had criticisms about the group, no matter how much you feel like you're under mind control or whatever, that was in there. That was in there. And when the pieces started to fall together and the coins started to drop, I began to hang on to all those pieces of information that people said were wrong. And the support I got from my family was just enough that, if you're on the line and somebody says it's a false teacher, and you're ready to think about leaving, that can make the difference. So, I don't know, all those pieces of information, even though I rejected them at the time, eventually they made sense and it helped me act on it.
What does GCI stand
Please, let's go on. Who else would like
Tell them what
to?
GCI stands
Great Commission International. It's a shepherding type fundamental group.
I was a walk away from the group referred to as the garbage eaters. I've been out since September. I want to say one thing has been very helpful in my readjusting has been the support that I received from my family. There was, I guess deep down I knew that I had wronged them, and the last thing I wanted to come back to was a bunch of bitterness and have to make a lot of explanations. I really needed their support, and I did find that. My older brother gave me a job, a place to stay. People in a Christian church that I'm attending give me about $500 worth of clothes and money to get a car and things like that. That's been very helpful in readjusting, coming out of a group with no job, not having much education. These are really concerns of how I was going to be able to just practically readjust, just concerning my material needs. Another thing, too, I considered was that in first coming out, there was kind of a pressure put upon me to get counseling. And deep in, I didn't want that pressure because for me to do that, I would have to acknowledge that I was sick. And I needed to feel like I was a sane person, that I wasn't loony or something like that, that I managed to hold on to enough reality. And so that was something else that they did not push, and I really appreciated that. And I kind of took it upon myself to contact other former members. There's a former member network, the group that I was in, and comparing stories, what they went through and their observations confirmed the things that I had seen independent of any kind of exit counseling that could have been offered. So that was very helpful to me to speak to former members.
I was a member of the Word of God sort of spirit, which some of you may have heard of. And I, like some others have expressed, it's very helpful to me to come to a conference like this and feel like I'm okay. The Word of God, the Word of God's group has some 30 or 40 affiliates worldwide, mostly Catholic. And one of the heads of the organization has private audiences with the Pope. I don't know anybody else that has private audiences with the Pope. They have, and so they have this official sanction. So when you try to tell people that things are a cult, you get blank stare. How can you say it's a cult? People here understand that it's a cult. Their parents here with children in it, and they know what it's like. And it's just very helpful to have an organization like this where you can speak your mind, tell the truth, and have people say, yeah, I believe that that's the truth. Keep up the good work.
Hi, I'm Linda Blood. I was in the Temple of Set, which is sort of an esoteric Satanist group that bore a great resemblance to a lot of the New Age groups. And one of the things I always really enjoy about CAN conventions is that I know that the people here, the parents of ex-members, are aware of the fact that this problem has a wider significance in American society today. And I found a lot of people on the outside don't. They still treat it as a curiosity. And I say that even to a certain extent with my own family, although they're beginning to realize, too, that this isn't just some oddball thing Linda happened to get mixed up with. But what can we do? I wanted to try to get it across to people in the general public that what does it mean now that these groups are expanding and spreading out into the society? You know, now that you've got ESTA and Lifespring and actualizations training people in business and military, what does it mean when the Unification Church really starts to get active in American politics? Is people still compartmentalize it and say, oh, well, that's just a group of crazies and they'll blow away and they won't really do anything. And it's becoming more and more of a problem, that way all the time. So if we can, help to educate people on the outside about that as well, it will help us too as former members, to realize that this just really wasn't some oddball thing we ran into because there's something wrong with us.
Hello. I was in Faith Assembly for 3 years, and thanks to the effort of my parents and my husband, I was deprogrammed by Dave and Bob, and I think they did an excellent job. I'm very happy they deprogrammed me because it helped avoid a lot of confusion that I hear here as a result of the deprogramming, where they showed me videos of the other groups and the mind techniques that these groups had used, and manipulative techniques. As a result of seeing the errors in the scripture, the way it had been twisted, as a result of seeing newspaper articles that I was unable to see before, they were able to get my mind start thinking on my own again. As Bob said, he was there to show me alternative points of view that I had not allowed myself to hear, thinking I would lose my salvation. And they were not there to brainwash me. They were there to help me see other sides, as I said. So through the process of talking with them for 4 days, bit by bit, I was under me saying, I hope this is true. And sure enough, I found out that as I got more and more bits of information, I could see how I had been duped by this group. The leader was Hobart Freeman. He did die following his own teaching, but the group continues. As a result of the deprogramming, then I went home with my husband. We had 2 children at the time. And so right then I was back into a mommy role. I was into, my parents were very supportive still. My friends that I had lost contact with for 3 years now were very open arms to me. And people were very understanding. The thing that was difficult, I went to the church we'd been attending, the Covenant Church, and for about the first 4 months, I could do nothing but cry sitting there listening to church, because it was the buzzwords, like you said, words of faith, words of put your trust in God, which in my particular group had double meanings. So anytime I'd hear that word, I'd have to stop and say, no, wait, that's, I'm not thinking Freeman's way now. What does it really mean? So through the process then now of 2 years, I've been out for 2 years, we've gotten involved in other Bible studies within our church. And through those studies and helping sort back through the errors, plus through the support of friends, I feel basically like that happened to a different person in a different time zone. And we talk to groups as much as we can at home. I did go through a slight period of depression there. When I first came out, Dave and Bob took me with my folks before I went to Unbound. I went to Unbound too for 3 weeks. Or I guess it was right before the experience in Unbound. We went into a restaurant where there's a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking. And you talk about the floating sensation. That was definitely no-nos that you don't do. And my reaction was, I've got to get out of this place, and I wanted to run away, which is kind of how I felt too when I'd gone back to church too. But I was able to catch it, and then talking with Dave and everything, I was able to deal with it. So I think that's kind of what I've got to say.
Thank you. We have about 7 minutes before we're going to close. I'd like to invite those people who haven't spoken, please share with you, and perhaps to talk about things that... Could you turn that one off, please? It's off. Okay. Maybe to talk about things that made it easier for them to come out, or things that made it harder for them to come out, or in the adjustment phase. Yeah. You have other things to say?
I thought I would mention a little bit about my experience. I was a walkout from an intense New Age environment. It was very difficult for years because I didn't know what was happening to me. I would float quite readily, especially at the mention of virtually any psychotherapeutic verbiage, because I was a therapy group junkie, among other things. And last night, I noticed that was starting to happen again. And using my multiple tracks, which I still use, I tried to visualize the ancient wisdom of the living force fields of gravity, but I still floated. And I noticed others had that experience. We had to get up and leave for a while. And I'm just acknowledging that was noticed, and you're not alone. And no offense intended to the speaker.
My name is Peggy, and I was in a group for 14 years, and I was held very much prisoner by the constant reaffirmation of the fact this was a messianic group, and I believed that were I to veer or believe in any way, my salvation would be lost. We were reinforced by an 18th century philosopher, Emanuel Swedenborg, and we were considered, if you left, you were totally lost. I experienced both walking away on my own as well as being rescued. I became quite the heroine when I escaped from those who were trying to rescue me and ran away and went back to the group and was treated as, of course you were taught that if anyone took you captive, you were just the weakest, and to have all this truth, especially 14 years, taken from you was something you had to fight with all the vitality that you had to free yourself of. However, I found that seeds had been planted in the initial rescue, which made me start using the integrity that was deep within me. 2 years before I actually left, it was mandated that I leave my husband and my 6 children. One daughter is still in the group, and to this day, I can't believe that I did that. It's like another person did it. However, it was mandated that if I didn't and I would lose my salvation, I'd lose my call to God because my husband and my children were unbelievers and fit for hell. But deep within me, I knew the strongest part of me was a good mother, and they tore it down and made me feel, as you mentioned before about Circle of Power, when I saw that movie, I realized that had been done to me over and over and over again. It was a constant being kept on up, down, in, out, never knowing really who I was, and yet on the external, I always appeared to be functioning fine, and everyone thought I was in real estate, and I looked like I had it all together. We were very involved in a national company. But what I'd like to say for any of you who may have members who have been in a group for a great period of time, that it's still possible that there's something deep within each of us that acknowledges something that is very, very true. And once I realized I'd been so violated, and I started taking the seeds that I knew were truth and fitting them with all the untruths that were not making sense to my basic humanity, I was able to take that and work with it. And then I came out, and everyone said, "You've done it the most painful way possible." I worked with Dave Clark for a couple of days, and he was most helpful. And then on my own, I sort of got my family back together again and started working with them. That was therapeutic. And then I went to Unbound for 2 weeks, and that was very, very good. And one of the most wonderful things of this is that I've worked with people from all denominations, and if anything, I've ended up with a love of the one true God that is awesome, that I probably never would have had I not been through this experience.
Brother Julius.
My name is Dave Clark, and I was in a group called The Walk, and I left my group about 13 years ago, and it's really encouraging to hear all these different accounts over the years, and I was a walk-away initially, and it was a slow, painful process because I lost a friend who committed suicide. That was the jolt that really shook me up quite a bit, and after walking out, there wasn't much information initially when it came to the mind control categories. I had doctrinal differences that were very obvious to me, but all the various layers, as Paul had pointed out earlier, I started to come in touch with that as time went on, and that you're dealing with extensive levels of influences here. And there's two key areas that I think are important in terms of what I've learned over the years: the processes that people are put through, and that dual identity that you pick up after a while, the real you and this new person that you become, and you go in and out of that, and the trance states have a lot to do with that. Also relationships, emotionally, dealing with people that I cared about an awful lot that were still in that group, and going through the frustrating efforts of trying to communicate with these people, and the pain. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of pain that I went through. And so in my head, I understood a lot of things, but in the emotions, it was very, very difficult to break away from a lot of things that meant an awful lot to me. And, the sorting out process was very time-consuming, and it was emotional and intellectual, and going in between the two, it was a struggle, but in the long run, coming through the school of hard knocks on this, there are a tremendous amount of tools available now that we did not have in the early years. And I think that we really need to make it known and available to people that these resources are there and they need to be tapped into, because a lot of people get a tremendous amount of healing from it. I know because there's some people who benefit by it.
Thank you very much. Thank everyone for sharing so much of yourselves. And I know I'm going to go back to Anna.
Thank you, Steve. A special thank you to all of you. To be a great appreciation for these young people to share their most intimate thoughts. That completes the first part. We're going to go into a second part here, so stay right where you are, and let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go into small groups right in this room. And the way it's going to be done is the last row. We'll just move back.
A diet that they're going to feel bad with. You can't give them
fields to and gain a better understanding of the negative effects that can occur to an individual in response to the manipulative techniques employed by these controlling groups. But there are many here, not as counselors, teachers, clergy, or law enforcement officials, but rather who have been directly affected by these groups, and in a very sometimes severe and serious manner. Those that have been affected, of course, are the former members who have been inducted into these groups and their families, parents, brothers and sisters and relatives, or spouses. Just general consensus that ex-members panels have been one of the most informative groups and sometimes the most emotional part of the conference. This year, though, we thought we'd approach it in a different fashion that hopefully will make it more informative and definitely more exciting. We've asked the parents of the former members to join the panel so that we might better understand some of the family dynamics that occur. And we're all dealing far more these days with the family dynamics that happen amongst cult members and their parents or spouses. Well, that's the informative. And why don't we start with Carol Popoff?
My name is Carol Popoff. I was in a psychotherapy cult with a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist, and I'm here today because of this gentleman.
And my name is Mark Popoff, and I'm Carol's husband.